don't think many surprises when you're looking in as Annie trying to get that tempo lead going as fast as you possibly can. Meanwhile, Ahri with that dreaming tree. So the board is set, and first shots are already being fired. Teemo entering the board.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think two pretty standard battlefields. We've seen Annie a couple times in the last few weeks. One of the quickest decks we currently have in the meta. It is unbelievable how fast this deck can be. We're already starting off with a very interesting tech card. You don't see the Teemo Scout very often in Annie, but at the end of the day, it's a 2-drop. It's going to help get on the battlefield first. I think going first with an aggro deck like Annie is always crucial. Ahri got some very good defensive capabilities with her legend ability, being able to reduce the might of the enemy attackers. And she's actually running the blue Ahri Inquisitive, which gives -2 when she's either attacking or defending. So both very good at taking battlefields and holding battlefields as well. So it'll be really interesting to see how this one plays out.
And also just great at maybe playing into the aggro matchup just that little bit, making sure to take some might away, fiddle around a bit, just anything to put on the brakes against this Annie. Annie is all about firing on all cylinders, where Ahri is really wants some more kind of a inner peace, inner zen in this very first match.
Yeah, exactly. You're spot on there. We see some pretty standard openers here. I think Ahri's gonna take her time, get on to Dreaming Tree, I imagine. Yeah, this is a great battlefield for Ahri. Obviously, we talked about it already, but whenever you're playing a green deck, Dreaming Tree is an absolute staple. You've got so many buff spells with things like Discipline on guard.
So versatile.
Yeah, exactly. Versatility is key. Also, one thing you can do, which is really nice, you can actually stupefy your own units, and then that's a 1-mana draw too, which is a great return on investment. We do see the early Gust come in, answered by the early Defy, so really nice there, little back and forth. I think that's a very important play from Ahri. You can't be falling behind in tempo in this matchup, so some very good play there.
Yeah, and when you see this match develop, right, the early game is usually a little more choreographed, you could say, right? I think the options are quite limited when you start out, but once you start hitting that turn 3, that turn 4, when the energy pools really start to expand, your options increase exponentially. And this is where the Annie can get in trouble. If she does not get these good trades off with her cards, she can get in trouble getting low on cards, getting low on fuel, and it will be actually very pivotal that this Kai'Sa will get a Conquer down. And with the Ahri having 4 mana up still, I would start to be a little tiny bit worried as an Annie.
Yeah, I think you've always got to be so careful whenever there's any runes left up on these green decks. Like I mentioned, there's a lot that can come down. With the Ahri legend ability, Kai'Sa will attack for a 3. The Clockwork Keeper already is a 2, so you're only 1 spell away from being from actually losing that combat. So you can see here, Ahri's looking like she might be. Oh, she's moving into reinforce. I like this play. I think it almost guarantees the Kai'Sa is going to have no way to get onto this battlefield at this time. So it'll be interesting to see what we do here.
Yeah, and it's really about trying to put a leash on this Annie. Make sure that she cannot play the game that she wants to play. And even though that she gets to go first, which is a pretty big advantage as an Annie, right? That is exactly the spot you want to be in. But it does limit your options. You cannot accelerate that Kai'Sa as fast as you want to. So she's going to play a little slower. It's going to be a little more choreographed. And it's really up to the Ahri to have the answers ready to deal with this Kai'Sa. And do not let this Annie, do not allow her to get comfortable in the matchup.
Yeah, exactly. We see the voicing come down for the Annie here. And the second Defy, I mean, we're only 7 cards into the deck for this Ahri, but 2 Defies. They have deramped themselves. They're only sitting on 3 runes at the moment, but again, a really crucial play there just to keep hold of this battlefield and stop the Annie scoring multiple points in a turn. I think this will probably seal the fate that it's going to be a 1 point hold this turn, nothing more. We see we can just retreat the Teemo to leave the arena's greatest empty. I think it's some good play. You always want to have the opportunity to move the Kai'Sa in later to obviously get the Conquer effect and draw a card. So I think that makes a lot of sense. There's not a lot of accelerate that Ahri's going to play, so that battlefield should remain empty throughout this turn.
Yeah, and even though the sacrifices are quite palpable for the Ahri right now, as the game progresses and the energy pools start to expand more and more, this Ahri can get more efficient with the cards that she plays. It's just a simple fact. As we get into the mid-game, these mid-range cards that the Ahri loves to leverage into large game advantages to get that card advantage going will be absolutely palpable. So getting this Kai'Sa into a conquering position will be crucial. Ahri so tricksy in what she can get done for herself, ramping, drawing. Will she have the answers for the Kai'Sa? If the Ahri can once again pressure the Kai'Sa out of her advantageous position, this Annie might be in big trouble.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think we see, you mentioned ramping in there. We see one of these ramp cards. This has become an absolute staple in green decks with the Find Your Center. So just a nice draw one, channel a rune. So next turn we'll be hitting, assuming we don't recycle anything now, we'll be hitting the 8-point break point, which is a very crucial point for all decks. That brings in things like Thousand Tail Watcher, potentially Tasty Feyfolk, and then obviously once we get to the 10 threshold, that's when a lot of these Ahri decks will be running Time Warps, which is obviously one of the most impactful cards you can have.
This is quite an
in
interesting
the game.
decision, Ollie, because we see the Ahri retreat, and with the amounts of interaction and combat spells that the Annie have at their disposal, a single unit at a battlefield is extremely vulnerable for these tricks, for these interaction type spells that can really mess with a single unit at a battlefield. So I get the feeling that you don't want to overextend yourself into that position of being in a position where you can lose 2 units to a single attack. However, against an Annie, you're really opening up the door to be barged down by a great many deal of interaction spells, including the one that you just got back, that Gust.
Yes, those. Yeah, so we see the Annie legend coming out here. Actually, taking back the Void Seeker and then going to use it again. I'm going to. Yeah, I think it's pretty logical that you've seen 2 Defies come out, that you can play around them not having a third Defy in their top 10. So I think good decision making there from the Annie. A nice player. We're already up to 5 points. See, it's so quick. I mean, obviously, you're at a very strong point to begin with. You're playing A going first and on Arena's greatest. But yeah, this is still starting to get a little bit scary here if you're the Ahri player, because you've got to try and find a way to start taking back some of these battlefields and stopping the Annie just closing this out.
The Annie has entrenched herself a little bit with the Kai'Sa getting that draw off. You're topping off on cards. You're getting these efficient trades through with the Void Seeker, with this absolute abundance of interaction spells. Yeah, you'll fight back and bring yourself back to 4. But once an Annie gets on that 6-point threshold, you might be in big trouble. And once that threat is introduced, there is no way to really get back from that point. You really need these really efficient trades as the Ahri. We're talking about Watchers. We're talking about just where you get an advantage for yourself rolling once again. Because the resources are starting to dry up just that little bit for the Ahri. Meanwhile, Annie is absolutely swimming in cards.
Yeah, exactly. It's very rare you see an Annie with 5 cards in her hand, but like I say, she's just played it well. She's used the things like the Kai'Sa. We are seeing the Charm come in here, so the Kai'Sa has been moved over. The Kai'Sa will be reduced to 1 because of the Ahri legend that we mentioned earlier. I think we could see the Annie player trying to do a little bit of maths to see if they could overcome that, but the answer is unfortunately no. We are going to see, interesting, that's a Find Your Center that will cost you 1 because the Annie's on 3 points. So we see we're readying 2 runes again. That's another thing you mentioned it as well there about efficiency. That's why I think Find Your Center's become so popular, because in so many scenarios it is incredibly efficient. I mean, even 3 mana, draw 1, channel a rune, not the worst price in the world. But when it's a 1 mana, draw 1, recycle channel a rune, it's an incredible return on investment. So we see it becoming very popular, and we are fully tapping out here as the Ahri player. That is an interesting play. Feels a little risky. At the end of the day, this is what really opens up the potential.
I think it really shows the desperation that the Ahri is in right now, where they don't have the proper answers for this current board state. I mean, we dealt with the Kai'Sa. That is already a great one to get through. But when your Annie has so many cards in hand, they become so slippery, so tricky with that many cards up their sleeves. It is an abundance of resources on the side of Annie, which the Ahri is just, they're struggling to keep up with the problems that are being laid down on this aggro deck side. Red side running away with it right now, especially with a free conquer on our bottom battlefield.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, interesting. We see the rebuke come in here on the Annie, on the Ahri. This could be a game-breaking play. I think whenever you're playing against these green decks, and they do, on the rare occasion that they fully tap out their board, you've got to be looking to take advantage at that point. I think that's when the door is really open. Yeah, exactly. you have to make the most of it. So we see the
Oh,
Annie moving both units in at the moment. So we're going
that is
in for
interesting, isn't it?
yeah, 1 and 2. So just obviously trying to do the maths. We'll still trade into oh, the Annie will still trade here into the Clockwork Keeper, and the Poro will score the point. So we should go to 6 here. We've got 5 runes remaining. We could play something like a Darius or potentially a sneaky deckhand straight to Arena's Greatest to score another point. But it'll be interesting to see if we've got any other plays with our remaining runes.
Yeah, but at this point, as the Annie, it's such a luxury to be playing the way you are. Yeah, there we go. A unit you can just play directly onto the battlefield, put onto 7, and now the ball is in Ahri's corner. It's up to them to find an answer for this, because if not, they have to answer absolutely everything, and they still have possible answers coming through on the side of Annie, who does get to untap those 2 runes at the end of the turn.
Yeah, I think we're back against the wall here for the Ahri player. This is quite a scary position to be in. The only thing I can think of is if we do have something like a Thousand Tail Watcher that can come in accelerated. There's not a great, like I mentioned earlier, the Fae Folk potentially could come in accelerated. We're going to really be looking for one of those units to be able to come in and take control
The energy is there, isn't it?
of these battlefields. Yeah, exactly. We're up to 9 runes now, so there's certainly a lot of playability. It's just a matter of figuring out how exactly we want to manage it. We see we're going in 1 with the Stupefy. Okay, so the Yorda will take control here, assuming we don't have an action from Annie. I think Annie just missed the legend ability to ready 2 runes, but yeah, we'll conquer there.
Okay.
Draw a card off the Stupefy, and let's see if that's given us any more hope. I mean, a Watcher here would take out the Poros pretty comfortably. We're moving quickly.
I mean, that's the magic number.
That is the magic number, and there it is. There is a reason this is a £25 rare in the game at the moment.
And I mean, for a proper reason, because despite the pound number, it is pulling its weight big time in a deck like this. It is an absolutely all-rounder, and honestly, kind of almost dabbling in another faction's characteristics, right? Coming in accelerated, just getting so much value on the board. And this is such a big, beefy foundation for the Annie to deal with. And now that she's being kicked off of both battlefields, she is really struggling to find a way back in, right? We need to deal with everything on the table right now, and these combat tricks are just bouncing off the armor of the Thousand Tailed Watcher. Need some proper answers.
Exactly, but I think the crucial thing is we're seeing 4 played for the Vayne. Okay, very nice. I think one of the key things we've seen is with this Annie deck is they've hit the 6-point break point. So the key with that is when you have the Vi and Ride the Wind combo. So for those of you that don't know, Vi is a unit where you can recycle 1 for your trash to give it +1 might, and then Ride the Wind, you can move a friendly unit and ready it. So the plan is, we can see that the Annie currently has 10 cards in trash, so that would take the Vi to a 13. They'd be able to then move the 13 in, and it's got ganking, so it can move across and score both. So that is the general game plan when playing Annie, of how to get over those winning points. We can see, obviously, they didn't have it this turn, but they are going to score. When you obviously can't win, you then get to draw. And we'll now see them trying to set up a battlefield of their own to hold for the win.
Yeah, and it is a tricky situation to be in right now, because the actual might on that battlefield is surmountable. It is very doable for an Ahri to mess about and just punch above their weight with the cards that they're running in their deck. Both at 7, a little bit of an advantage for the Annie, who is ready to answer with as many cards as she wants. A 3, it's not a great deal, but that is, I believe, the game.
That is a scoop.
Called.
Yeah, game what they scoop there. Very good play from the Annie having that accelerated Vayne. I think that's the key. There's a lot of cards in red that can do things like that. You've got the Vayne, the Darius, Kai'Sa, Ride the Wind. There's a lot of ways you could accelerate a unit in this Annie deck. So it's a great play. Very solid game 1 there.
In a deck that already has a great deal of answers to Trixie up those showdown phases you have in the game, it is gonna be tight. All right, we are off and underway. 2-drop coming in. That is, I mean, you'll love to see it.
Yeah, probably everyone's favorite opening turn in the game if you play any blue deck is just the good old Ray from Blue Student. What an incredible card this is. But this is the thing I was thinking. We've got a really nice play here. This card is actually great for if you're going second as Annie. The sneaky deckhand that can be played straight to a battlefield. So when you see the Annie, it's just currently deciding where she wants to go. But we can see that they are going to choose Reaver's Row. So an excellent opener there. Gets the first point even with going second. So some really nice moves there.
Yeah, you just get to cheat tempo with this card. And when I saw it come out, when you look at it firsthand, you're not that impressed. But the longer you look at it and the more games you get under your belt, the more you get excited by cards that allow you to cheat tempo. That is why accelerated is such a powerful aspect, such a powerful keyword to have on a card. It's not only in aggro decks, but with the amount of retreating that you can do in this game. Set yourself up for another success in the next turn and doing it in efficient style.
Yeah, exactly. You're spot on. So some really nice moves there. We did see the Ahri played to base. Interesting. I think maybe want to make a charge. But this is the thing with the Reaver's Row. It's so tricky because this Ahri can move in and give the sneaky deckhand -2, but they'll just retreat. So you really don't get the full benefits of these combat tricks and the Ahri legend ability when your opponent can just retreat every turn. We do see the Kai'Sa come down and they'll move in to Grove of the God Willow. This would be... We see only one rune up for the Ahri player. They left it a little bit risky, but let's see if they were accounting on this. We are seeing the one rune and on guard. Fantastic. So what's even better about this is on a student. Obviously, the student then gets an extra +1 for just playing a spell. So it actually turns into a 1 mana +3. We will then hold to also draw a card with the God Willow. So it's fantastic play there. And then really that just negated Annie's whole turn.
That is a really greedy play from the Annie. I feel like when you're playing into the Ahri, you kind of have to assume a worst case scenario, right? And you're already kind of doing fine. And this accelerated Kai'Sa play is really aggressive. You were already fine on tempo. You were in a good situation already. And this was a big gamble for medium payoff, right? Best case scenario, I mean, it would be a good swing in tempo, but you're putting a lot on the line for anything had to happen. And it would have been over, and that's what happened right now. You're losing out on a lot of power and tempo right now.
Yeah, I think that was a very risky play, like you mentioned, because you see 1 mana up, so you know the discipline's not possible, but there's still, we saw the Stupefy last game, and given it's Ravenbloom student, that would be a 2-point swing. We see the on guard, so again, that's a 3-might swing. So I think that was a bit of a risky play, maybe just a bit of impatience from the Annie side of things. But yeah, here's what we move on now. We see we're going in here with the cleave, so it's going to be 5 against. So it's going to be 4 against 2, and we see the discipline. So yes, another combat trick coming in, which will just win the combat. So yeah, this Ahri seems to be in a very strong position at the moment. I think, like you say, when you get the deck going, it can be very powerful.
And this is the slippery slope that you got yourself on as the Annie, right? By taking a bit of a gamble in the previous turn, now you are limping behind. Meanwhile, you're an aggro deck. You want to be getting ahead. You want to be running far, far away in points. However, now you are demoted to making these desperate plays one after the other. And the Annie just has to concede, knows that there's no real possible road back into that game if they cannot get a hat early. A gamble did not pay off, and Ahri will be equalizing the score.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the quickest games I've seen. I think it's perfectly understandable. I think anyone that's played any aggro decks in any trading card game will know that some games you just fall too far behind and there's no road back really. The deck's not built for it. So I think it's a pretty reasonable scoop there from the Annie. I think the Ahri was in a very dominant position. But yeah, I think that was just too big a risk. I think with the Kai'Sa, there are just too many combat tricks that a green and blue deck can have that will just completely reverse the play. And then when you have that, you basically just wasted your entire second turn, which is never the place you want to be. I'm guessing the hand probably wasn't great. There probably weren't too many other options. But yeah, can always be a bit nerve-wracking. We don't know how much tournament experience these guys have. The game's obviously still very new. So it'll certainly be interesting to see if they can bounce back. The key thing is they will be on the play, Game 3 again. So let's see if they can use the same momentum they had in Game 1 and take the series.
Now, Ollie, enlighten us, those who are not as familiar with the Runes and Rift structure of the tournament. Do these players get to see each other's deck lists at the start of the turn?
No, so it's closed deck list to the start, and then normally the top 8 or the top cut will be revealed at a later date whenever that is announced.
Then
So
I will be a little critical. I think scooping that early, you could have used that time, right? We're not on a very tight timer. You could have just used a few extra turns, feel out if there's any shenanigans going on under the waterline. Unless your mental is prone to being messed with by playing a losing game. I think the extra information you can gather for yourself by kind of feeling out, all right, what version of the Ahri am I playing against here, right? Because we are seeing some difference coming through with the blue Ahri. Like I said, I don't want to spoil too much, but there are some tricks and traps hidden in these deck lists. I would have liked to see them play till the end. Reasonable scoop to save mental, but they might be denying themselves that little bit of extra information that can come oh so in handy.
I agree. That felt like a bit of an early scoop for me as well. I think there are still things you can do. And even though they say it's just a great opportunity just to gather some information. I mean, you're realistically, it's unlikely you're going to win, but you never know. Crazier things have happened. But I think, yeah, it'd be certainly interesting. You'd want to see just to make sure what does your opponent have. We do see a nice opening turn here this time with the Palti Poro coming through. The Ahri just playing the Find Your Center, so we are ramping, but obviously no bodies on board is always a bit of a nerve-wracking experience against a deck like Annie. So it'll be interesting to see what we can do here.
Yeah, and we are actually seeing the Zon Warrens come out now from the Annie.
Yeah.
You've talked about it before. It allows you to see more cards in your deck while dumping the rest, which you can then burn up as fuel. Now, this is an absolutely flying start that will punish a bit of the passivity that we've seen from the Ahri in this third and deciding match.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think one of the nice things to actually think about here, which is quite niche, is because Ahri is running Candlelit Sanctum, which is a bit niche. You can check the top 2 cards of your deck and choose to either keep them or recycle. But then to combo that with Zon Warrens, so you can, if you'd like to, tailor the card you're going to draw. So you know before you go in and discard and then draw a random card, you can actually make sure, oh, okay, this is a card I want to draw. Or no, I don't need this. Yeah, let's put this to the bottom of the deck. So actually a really nice combo there. Probably, not on purpose from the Ahri, but still a nice combo nevertheless.
Yeah, setting yourself up. And when you have to get the game down to broad strokes, it is a game of A, resources, and B, information. And the information can be either about how your opponent plays, what they are playing, or how they want to play the match out. And also, if you get to see more cards, you will see better cards. You have to dig, and with the cards set up currently, you're only seeing in a match like maybe 30% of your deck. So allowing yourself to see 50, 60, maybe 70% of your deck allows you to be that much more consistent and get that much closer to the peak of what your deck is capable of. Now, Ahri does get some units down on the board, but they will mean they'll have quite a deficit to claw back, especially with these non-accelerated units, and the Annie looking to hold 2 battlefields already if nothing comes through, and tapping out now.
Yeah, I think we've accepted we're going to have to give them one more turn. I think I like just developing, some units in base so we can try and make more of a push next turn. Very interested to see the hidden card come out of Annie. I think this would be a lot more exciting if we hadn't seen the Teemo in game 1. Although what it does do is it does ask the question, because we typically see Annie decks, so not that we've seen it this series, so we're not 100% sure, but run cards like Fight or Flight that can be hidden. So normally you would just assume, but because in game 1 we saw the Teemo, that does add an extra layer to the question that Ahri has to answer on whether they want to go into that battlefield or not, because those are 2 very different calculations if a unit's going to get sent back to your base, or if a 4-might Teemo's about to spring out of a bush on you. So I think some interesting developments here. It will certainly be I'm curious to see how the Ahri is planning to tackle that.
Yeah, and it makes it just harder to predict, and it denies information from your opponent, right? We were talking about it earlier. Getting as little information to your opponent about your deck, about your intentions, will be key, especially as you move up on the ladder and the players get better, and better. And when they see an Annie, they will know 80, maybe 90% of the cards that you will be playing. Having these little switch ups in your deck can really knock someone off their balance, especially when you are playing something like the Ahri that needs stability and a bit of momentum to get into the swing of things. That can really throw them off.
Absolutely. I think so. We see the Ahri try to move up to Zone Warriors just to at least establish some sort of a base. We do see the Gust come through. Gust is not as good in this matchup as it could be because you see things like the On Guard can come in. So I think obviously with Gust, it's you can bounce a 3-might unit. The Ahri deck in particular, or any green deck, has a lot of ways to buff units. So it's not only worrying about things like Defy to cancel the spell. Any buff spell will also prevent the unit being returned to hand as well.
Yeah, it is a bit of a position of luxury for the Annie to be in right now, where they don't have to necessarily answer anything. They can decide to entrench themselves a little bit, and I wouldn't be too surprised to see them. Yeah, well, it's a little more tricky now that there's a hidden card, right? So you can't really retreat safely, which is why we don't see hiding the cards in aggro decks all that often. When aggro decks care more about conquering than they care about holding. Their decks are more suited towards conquering instead of holding. Very Noxus-esque, I will say. We can get there, but from that moment, you got to figure it out yourself, buddy. We're not touching that with a 10-foot pole.
Exactly. Very interesting. We see the Ahri discard Discipline. So I thought, especially with having the Ravenbloom student on the board, that could be a very useful card if they did want to try and push in and take control of the Candlelit Sanctum as well. But so maybe they have another copy in their hand. We don't have the full information, but yeah, certainly interesting play there. We are seeing 5 runes being tapped at the moment. We're gonna. No, we're untapping 5 runes now. I was going to say there's a couple of cards that could have come down there to spruce up the situation, but not just yet. We're going to go in first. I think this is always the correct way to do it. I think for the most part, you always want to go in with as many runes available as possible, so your opponent doesn't exactly know what's waiting for them. And we do see the fight or flight, so we can play around that and we can have the unit returned to us.
Yeah, will prevent anything coming through. Now, a question I do have for myself. Do we know the exact amount of points that this Ahri is on? Because she is holding a battlefield, of course.
Yes, it should be at least. I think they took the battlefield this turn, was it? So it should be 1.
Well, and we were talking about tricks earlier, and look what has introduced itself onto the battlefield.
I know, the big golem has entered the chat. Preparing for your Summoner Skirmishes, you'll be seeing a lot of Blitzcrank. He is the winner, Matt, of course. But what an interesting card. I think I've seen this in sort of playtesting, and when the set first released, people were very high on Blitzcrank because I thought, oh, this is a very cool idea. Kind of fallen slightly out of favor more recently, but in the right spot, it's a great card. I mean, we see him come in, drag the Annie straight into the battlefield. Obviously, the Annie can't handle that sort of might. And so, yeah, it's a great move. But we are seeing the Annie already up to 5 points. So, getting quite scary already for this Ahri player.
Yeah, and the margin of error for the Annie right here is just significant, right? They can afford to lose some resources. They can afford to make some more of these low percentage plays that will have either a big payoff or net them very little and still be fine, because they have that extra margin of error cooked in for themselves by having such a dominant early game. Meanwhile, the Ahri hasn't really managed to get comfortable in the amount of energy that she garners herself, the amount of cards that she garners for herself. Annie is ruling this match as if it's her kingdom alone. Now, can she drag it over the line? 6 is the magic number we are looking for, where Annie can really start threatening the entire match.
Exactly. I think you're spot on there. So we see Blitzcrank, obviously the big downside of his ability is that when he holds, he has to be returned to hand. So we see that coming through at the moment. I think the key thing we got to choose here is we have to get this Pyro off the board. We can't let the Annie hold for 6. It would just be too vulnerable. I think we see a lot in Riftbound that you can score a lot of points early, but getting that final point is critical. And like you just touched on, 6 is the magic number in this case. So we'll see the Ahri take control, discarding the Watcher. So very interesting. We were talking about how impactful that card can be. But we're only at 7 runes at the moment.
But that gives away so much information, doesn't it? What is the one scenario that you would throw away a 1,000-tailed Watcher? Tell me, Ollie.
You've probably got at least another one in your hand.
You have another one in your hand. It has to be. Now, to me, that just screams danger. That just screams from all sides, watch out, alarm, be ready for the big bad fox to come eat you whole. Now, will it be enough? Because like we said before, this Annie does, she can withstand a bad turn and still have the advantage in points.
Exactly. I think you're spot on there. So we just saw a little bit of dispute between the Ravenloon student moving into scores on Warrens. Obviously, the Blitzcrank did hold before it gets bounced to the hand, so it doesn't necessarily count as a conquer. We can see the Blitzcrank come down again and just scoop the Poro over, and I think that's exactly what we're going to be seeing. So the Poro is now going to get dragged across. So one by one, Blitzcrank is landing some hooks on these Annie units, but a little bit costly on the Poro. Obviously, he has got deflect, so we saw at the Ahri have to recycle an extra rune. Crucially, that means we'll only go to 7 next turn. So we've discussed already how 8 is the magic number for the runes for Ahri. So there won't be a Watcher next turn if it's needed. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here.
Now, we were talking about how Ahri is slowly clawing her way back into this game, how it's getting a little tougher for Annie to hold on. However, we have not seen a lot of cards come through from Annie's side, which means she is saving up. She can bank these cards for one heck of an explosive turn coming through. So, especially with all of the card selection that we've seen come through with the stacked deck, the cards that are left in Annie's hand, you can only imagine that these have to be the absolute creme de la creme of cards in her deck when she's had this much time to select them and call the weak and discard anything she has no eyes for right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think we saw a lot of cycling of the deck early with things like taking over the Candlelit Sanctum, the Zon Warrens. We saw a stack deck get played. We're currently only sat with 8 cards in trash at the moment, so not an unbelievable amount, but we'll slowly build it up over time. We do see a nice little combat trick there with the Ride the Wind to get away from the Blitzcrank's attack, so that she will hold and crucially go to 6, unless we see something like a Charm potentially come through, but that would be a very expensive Charm. You'd have to pay the deflect cost again. So it looks like the Poro will just be able to hold again, and this Poro is becoming a real nuisance for this Ahri to deal with.
Yeah, and exactly, because every time that you're trying to answer it through one of your tricksy answers, it is keeping you from getting that thousand-tailed Watcher onto the board. And, the card is very, very strong. You can say a great deal about the power ceiling of this card. However, you need to pay for it. And if you cannot pay for it, it's not entering that board anytime soon. And with the Annie threatening the 6 points, even the thousand-tailed Watcher might be just too slow if you cannot have it stick.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think we're seeing some real thought going into this next move. I don't know if they're having a slight judge dispute, but interesting to see. But it looks like, as far as I can tell, that the Annie's in a great spot. We see only 4 runes. I think a lot of these aggro decks are quite happy to sit quite low to the ground when it comes to the rune page. But at the end of the day, the Vi Ride the Wind combo is only 4 runes. So certainly it's an opportunity. We did see one Ride the Wind. Sorry, go ahead.
No. We have indeed seen a lot of power-hungry cards in these aggro decks. I haven't seen a lot of these mana rocks coming through, right? Where you're allowed to pay for the power through that. Can you tell me a little more about why we would want to run these mana rocks that give us the power, maybe saving our mana pool a little bit, get more advantage out of the amount of cards that we have, over the investment you have to make by sacrificing a card slot in your deck?
Yeah, exactly. I think you've kind of touched on it right at the end. So seals, everyone sort of has their own opinion on seals. Some decks they're very good, some decks they're less popular. And I think the real reason is simply the fact you just rather would have an extra card in your deck. I think 39 main deck cards plus your 1 legend is a very tight number. You're already at a push to refine the deck. So I think most decks unfortunately don't really have the space. I think we do see the Seal of Unity for Order come through in Darius Hook. Yeah. I know that's a really nice one because that's you're consistently every turn with Baited Hook recycling at least 1. So it makes quite a lot of sense there. Whereas I think a lot of these aggro decks would rather just have more aggressive cards and just accept that they're going to live low to the ground, rather than potentially lose that card slot. But we do see some decks run them. I know Jinx is still quite popular to run the Fury Seal in there as well. So some decks like it. I think just for the most part, it's not. I think it probably just comes largely down to the deck size would probably be my biggest factor for that. Is it's already a small number. It's not like other TCGs are often sort of 50 cards. I'm sure if we could have 50 card decks, we would see a lot more seals in the game. But currently, we unfortunately cannot. We are going to see the Vayne come down here. She is going to go charging in, which is interesting. She gets assault +3, so she'll swing in for a 4. The cleave will take her to 7. So it's now currently 7 against 7.
But there's a lot of energy up on the side of Ahri.
Yeah, we've got 2 runes up, so that is pretty much every answer you could hope for. So let's see. We're just sorting out the might totals, I think, at the moment. But it is currently 7v7 at the moment. We are seeing 2 runes tap. That is a discipline. That will work out as a +3 because the student gets the extra 1 for the spell as well. So it's now going to be 10 against 7. So unless we see a double cleave here from the Annie, this is unfortunately just going to net very little. It will kill the Blitzcrank, which is obviously helpful, but we are going to see one more.
Yeah, there we go.
Here's the double cleave comes through. So we're now 10 against 10. So they won't hold the battlefield, but they should at least trade everything off. If my maths is correct. But this does, most importantly, it gets rid of the Blitzcrank, which is causing problems, and also it empties that battlefield to go in next turn for the hold. If we hold Candlelit again and we conquer, that will be the game and the series.
Yeah, and you might you might see us talk about how you might sometimes want to retreat to be sure you can really stack that double conquer coming through, but that dynamic really changes when you're playing against Ahri, who is really, really great at entrenching herself on a battlefield. And once again, you're playing with such a large margin for the Annie right here, right? You're sitting on 6 against just a measly 2. So even when you can set up in the way you have, you can just take a break, take a breather to fill up the tank once again, to have an absolutely nitrous-filled start, threatening the game if allowed. And is that all she wrote?
That is it. That is all she wrote. I think Ahri didn't have any answers. She just had to sort of hope and pray that Annie didn't have anything accelerated. Unfortunately, we see the sneaky Deckhand come through, and that will be the game. So we see the Ahri's hand now as a Windwall, Windwall, a Time Warp, and a Watcher. So all of that top end, but we saw they just recycled too many runes early, could never get to the stage where they could play it. So a great move there from the Annie, and she will take the series and get off to a good start in this week's weekly tournament.